Change yourself, change your life. There was a boy who woke up every morning feeling the same heaviness in his chest. He looked at the world and believed that nothing was made for him. Every door seemed closed and every dream felt distant. He waited for something to change. He waited for luck. He waited for people to notice him. Days turned into months and months into years. Nothing changed because he did not change. One quiet morning, he looked at himself in the mirror. Not with anger, but with honesty. He saw fear in his eyes. He saw doubts sitting deep inside his mind. That day, he asked himself a simple question. What if the problem is not the world? What if the problem is me? The question stayed with him like a shadow. It followed him through the day and into the night. He could not escape it for the first time. He decided to stop blaming everything around him. He decided to take responsibility for his own life. The next morning, he woke up a little earlier. It was not easy. His body wanted to sleep. His mind told him to give up, but he did not listen. He took a small step, then another, and then another. He started reading. He started learning. He started pushing himself, even when it felt uncomfortable. Every day, he fought a silent battle inside his mind. Some days he lost, but he always came back stronger. People around him did not notice the change at first. They still saw the same boy, but inside something was shifting. Something was growing. His thoughts became clearer. His actions became stronger. His habits began to shape a new version of him. One day, someone asked him what changed. He smiled and said, "Nothing around me changed. I changed slowly. Opportunities started to appear." Not because the world suddenly became kind, but because he was ready to see them. He stopped waiting for permission. He stopped fearing failure. He started creating his own path. The boy who once felt lost began to inspire others, not with words, but with his journey. And every time someone asked him how he did it, he would say, "Change yourself, change your life." And as he kept walking forward, he realized that this journey never truly ends. Because every new level requires a new version of yourself. And somewhere deep inside, he knew that the real story had just begun. And the boy kept walking. Even when the path ahead was unclear, he no longer needed perfect conditions to move forward. He had learned that progress begins with a single step taken in faith. There were days when the old version of him tried to return. Whispers of doubt filled his mind, telling him that he was not enough, telling him to slow down, telling him to quit. But now he recognized those voices. He did not fight them with fear. He answered them with action. Each morning became a new chance to prove himself wrong. Each night became a moment to reflect on how far he had come. He began to notice the small changes. The way he spoke with confidence, the way he carried himself with purpose, the way his eyes no longer looked lost. People started to feel his energy. They could not explain it, but they could sense it. Some were inspired, some were confused, some even doubted him, but he no longer needed their approval. He had built something stronger than validation. He had built belief within himself. As time passed, his goals became bigger, his vision became clearer. He no longer chased dreams, he worked towards them with discipline. There were still struggles, there were still moments of pain, but now he understood their purpose. Pain was no longer an enemy. It became a teacher. Failure was no longer an end. It became a lesson. One evening, as the sun slowly disappeared behind the horizon, he sat quietly and thought about his journey. He remembered the boy who once waited for life to change. He almost could not recognize him, because the person he had become was different, stronger, focused, alive. He realized that the biggest transformation was not in his results, but in his mindset. The world around him had not changed much, but his perspective had changed everything. And with that new perspective, he began to see endless possibilities. He started helping others who felt the same way he once did. He shared his story not to impress, but to remind them that change is possible. He told them that the first step is always the hardest, but it is also the most important. Some listened, some walked away, but a few stayed. And those few began their own journey. Watching them struggle reminded him of his own beginning. It reminded him that growth is never easy, but it is always worth it. The boy kept evolving. He kept learning. He kept pushing beyond his limits, because he knew something that he once did not understand, that change is not a one-time decision. It is a daily choice. And every single day he chose to become better than he was yesterday, even on the days when progress felt invisible. Even on the days when motivation was gone, he relied on discipline, he relied on consistency, and slowly, step by step, he began to reach places he once only dreamed of. Yet deep inside, he knew that this was not the destination, because growth does not have a finish line and the journey of becoming never truly stops. And so he continued forward with quiet determination in his heart, and a fire that refused to fade, knowing that somewhere ahead there was another version of himself waiting to be discovered. And the boy kept moving forward with a steady heart. He no longer rushed the process. He trusted it. There were moments when everything felt slow, when progress seemed invisible, when effort felt heavier than usual, but he did not stop. He had learned that growth often hides in silence, that the strongest changes happen when no one is watching. He started to enjoy the journey itself, not just the results. Not just the victories. Even the hard days began to mean something to him. He would wake up before the world, sit in the quiet, and listen to his thoughts. They were no longer filled with fear. They were filled with purpose. He began to ask better questions. Why is this happening to me? But what can I learn from this? And those questions changed everything. He saw opportunities in places where he once saw problems. He found strength in moments where he once felt weak. Time passed, and his life continued to evolve. The people around him noticed a calm confidence. Within him, he did not speak loudly, he did not try to prove anything, his actions spoke for him. There were new challenges now. Bigger ones, more complex ones, but he faced them with the same mindset, one step at a time. Sometimes he would feel tired. Not physically, but mentally. On those days, he would slow down, but he would never go back because he remembered who he used to be. And he refused to return to that place. The boy understood something deeper now. That change is not about becoming someone else. It is about becoming who you were always meant to be. Layer by layer, he removed the fear, the doubt, the limits he once believed were real. And beneath all of that, he discovered his true self, a version of him that was always there, just waiting to be revealed as he continued walking. This path, he realized that every person he meets is fighting their own battle. He became more patient, more understanding, not because life became easier, but because he became stronger. There were still storms, there were still setbacks, but they no longer defined him. They shaped him. One night he stood under the open sky, looking at the endless stretch above him, and he felt something he had never felt before: peace. Not the kind that comes from everything being perfect, but the kind that comes from knowing you are growing, from knowing you are on the right path. And in that quiet moment, he made a promise to himself: no matter how far he goes, no matter how much he achieves, he will never stop changing. He will never stop growing, because the moment you stop changing is the moment you stop living. And with that thought, he took another step forward, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. And somewhere ahead, another challenge was waiting. Another lesson was forming. Another version of himself was calling him forward. And the boy stepped into the unknown. Without hesitation, he had learned to trust the path, even when he could not see it clearly. The road ahead was different now. It was not just about proving something, it was about becoming something greater. He started to notice how his decisions shaped his days, and how his days slowly shaped his life. Every small choice mattered. Every moment held meaning. There were times when the pressure felt heavy, when expectations tried to weigh him down, but he stayed grounded. He reminded himself why he started. He reminded himself of the pain he once felt, and that memory gave him strength. The boy no longer feared discomfort. He welcomed it because he knew that comfort never creates growth. He pushed beyond limits that once seemed impossible. He explored parts of himself he never knew existed. His mind became sharper. His focus became deeper. Distractions lost their power over him. He no longer chased approval. He no longer compared his journey with others. He understood that every path is different, and every struggle has its own purpose. Some days were still difficult. Some nights still felt long, but even in those moments, he found something valuable. Clarity. He began to see patterns in his thoughts. He began to understand his emotions. Instead of running from them, he faced them. And in facing them, he gained control. The boy realized that true strength is not loud. It is quiet and consistent. It shows up every day, even when no one is watching. As he moved forward, new doors opened in unexpected ways. Opportunities came, not his luck. But as a result of his preparation, he was ready now, ready to take risks, ready to grow even more, and yet he remained humble, because he knew that growth never stops, and there is always more to learn. He started to see life as a journey of endless becoming, not a race. Not a competition, but a personal evolution. The boy began to enjoy the process of building himself. Brick by brick, day by day, even when progress was slow, even when results were far away. He kept going because deep inside he had built something unbreakable, a mindset that refused to quit. And as he walked further into his journey, he felt a quiet excitement within him. Not because he had reached somewhere, but because he knew there was so much more ahead. More lessons to learn, more challenges to face, more growth to experience, and without stopping, without looking back, the boy continued forward. Stronger than before, wiser than yesterday, and more determined than ever to discover who he could truly become. And one day the boy paused, not because he was tired, not because he wanted to stop, but because he wanted to look back. He stood quietly and saw the long road behind him. The struggles, the doubts, the moments when he almost gave up. He saw the boy he used to be, lost, afraid, waiting for life to change, and for a moment he smiled because he finally understood everything. Nothing around him had magically transformed. The world was still the same, but he was not. He had changed his thoughts, he had changed his habits, he had changed his actions, and in doing so, he had changed his life. The pain that once held him back had become the reason he moved forward. The fear that once controlled him had become the thing he overcame. The doubt that once filled his mind had been replaced with belief. He realized that change was never about becoming perfect. It was about becoming better little by little, day by day. And as he stood there in that quiet moment, he felt a deep sense of pride. Not loud, not overwhelming, but calm and real, because he knew the truth. Now no one was coming to save him. No moment was going to suddenly change everything. It was always him. It had always been him. The boy took a deep breath and looked ahead once more. The journey was still there. The path was still open, but now he walked it differently. With purpose, with strength, with belief. And as he took his next step forward, he carried a simple truth in his heart. Change yourself, change your life. And this time he did not just say it, he had lived it.